yourself, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we could do a whole interview on making a record,
indeed.
as you well know.
Yeah.
I mean, just the studio, picking a studio, and
sure.
I mean, we use the same studio, and one of the reasons is because they have this one particular mic, and it's the only mic that I know of like it in New York City, called the VariAcoustic, and it predates the RCA 44. And it just sounds unbelievable on trombone, and the studio engineer knew that. You know, he's like, "This is the best mic for trombone," and it really is.
That's at Systems 2?
Yeah, Systems 2. You know, I've never seen that mic anywhere else.
Yeah.
I'm sure they do exist, but in any case, yeah. I mean, there's so much that goes into it, and you know, I think it's really smart if you're doing your first record. I wish I would have done this, is to hire a friend or. Just, you know, pick the brain of someone who does have the experience to avoid some of the common pitfalls, because there are many. As we, you know, we both made a lot of the same mistakes the first time around. And
what are you talking about?
Yeah, right. Never mind, they were perfect records. But you know, it's a complicated process. There's a lot to learn, and I feel like, I mean, I feel like now after 3 CDs, I really kind of have a formula down. But I mean, maybe the best thing to do here is talk about some of those pitfalls. I mean, certainly a studio choice is a big one, and you know, you get what you pay for, even in today's, you know, high-tech home studio environment. You can't replace, you can't, you know, you're not going to get a mic that sounds like a VariAcoustic by spending $50 an hour. You know, it just won't happen. And even if you have a good mic, you need really great preamps, and you know, those are tens of thousands of dollars sometimes. And you know, so you know all this stuff. I'm preaching to the choir. But I think that certainly, you know, not skimping on studio time is important. Mixing, you don't necessarily need to spend big bucks, because even in studios, big studios now, they're mixing in Pro Tools, and many people have Pro Tools with good plugins. And mastering is a really important step you don't want to skimp on. Marshall's lucky enough, he had it in the family set up for mastering, right?
Yeah. My brother, he actually, my first record, I did it at Systems 2, and then I put it on a hard drive, and I took it out to my brother. He had a studio in his house at the time. We mixed it there.
Oh, awesome. That's great.
And then he mastered it. And the latest one, actually my latest record, I didn't do a Systems 2.
Oh, that's right.
MSR Studios.
Right, which is where I did my first record.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. At the time it was called Right Track.
Right Track.
And then Legacy after that, and then now it's called...
on 48th Street?
On 48th Street,
yeah. Sure. Yeah.
And actually it was actually a really cool thing to do a record in a different place, because I love Systems 2 studio. It's a great studio. But also MSR, it's kind of a different vibe. It has like a brick wall and kind of really old wood floors. Almost look like a barn or something. You know, and it's kind of just a different atmosphere from.
And they have great mics.
Yeah, they also have great mics.
And it's
yeah.
certainly not cheap. I mean, you
can't
skip on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, mastering is really important for sure.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the next step is getting it out there, and that's the really frustrating part. Is nowadays, since everything is almost exclusively sold online and distributed online, truly anyone can make a CD of varying qualities and get it out there. And you know, from a critic's perspective and an audience's perspective, there's a lot of material to sort through. You know, and I won't mince words. There's a lot of kind of mediocre stuff to sort through, and so that's the frustrating thing. And I think that's when a publicist comes in handy, because typically publicists aren't going to take on a lot of that more mediocre work. That's not always true, but they will give you a certain sense of importance that unless you're already established, you don't have otherwise. And publicists will really help get you some reviews, which you get some reviews that can lead to gigs, and obviously you get some more gigs, that leads to more reviews, that starts leading to some more notoriety in the scene. So I think it's a really important step, making a record. It is like making a business card, or I think of it more like a novel for an author. I mean, something you have to do. I mean, we're creative artists, and you want to capture that work every so often. Even if you're not a composer, just capture your improvised spirit. You know, you want to document that. So I think it is a really important thing to do. It's something that kind of documents your progress, and something that you're able to leave kind of a trail behind you as you develop and as you change stylistically. And I think it's a really important step. Yeah. It's
a great learning tool too, though. And that's one thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
One amazing thing is, like, I remember, especially the first record. I remember, okay, I got it. I was so excited, man. Cool. I put it in. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
It sounded awful, you know, and you just, because you're sitting there just listening, you're your own worst critic, and so you're listening, and now, like, some of those, it's the same thing with second records. It's like, oh man, It's awful.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't listen. I can't. Why am I going to do this? I just wasted all this money and I'm going to throw it away. But actually, you learn so much by really listening to yourself so critically and over and over again as you're mixing and stuff. But what I find though is like those records, if that stuff, if you put it away for a while and you come back later, it's like, oh, it's not so bad, you know. But it's a great one of the best ways to learn. I mean, even practicing, you know, especially with iPhones or whatever you have, you just press boom. Listen back. Oh, my time's not good, or sharp, flat.
I think that's so important for students, you know, for all of us as professionals as well. You know, we've got to listen to ourselves, and you know, it's why I suppose back in the day, studio musicians were so up on their game because they were constantly evaluating how they were playing on a regular basis. But I can tell you for sure, none of your records sound bad. Both of you guys. I mean, I remember, and I think Ryan, it's a great point too. It's like, you know, you make that record, that's what was happening on that day at that time in your life. And I loved listening to your guys' stuff and saying, you know, yeah, it sounds different and maybe better now. I don't know, but they all sound great. And it's kind of nice just to see how you guys have evolved as musicians. It's great. You know, one of the things I find interesting with especially younger players at the college level right now is they're not necessarily so inclined to be involved in big band playing. And I understand that, you know, certainly from a creative standpoint, small group playing is superior in that regard. But I always looked at playing in a big band, which a lot of my career was involved in that, and I feel like it's kind of a foundation for good ensemble playing. And that ensemble playing is not just playing in a big band. It could be, you know, more work-like stuff like playing a show or playing studio music or whatever it may be. You guys are both great soloists, but you're also great section players. I love when we've gotten to play together. It's just like feels, wow. But it just feels good. You know, you sit down and you guys just are such good musicians. You're listening all the time. Can you just touch a little bit on how you approach, you know, ensemble playing and maybe how that differs from how you approach your solo playing?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say, like, if I'm playing in an ensemble, the biggest thing I'm always thinking about, I'm listening. And I'm trying to, you know, I'm listening on the guy next to me, you know, how am I going to play? It depends if I'm playing lead or if I'm playing second, but also trying to hear, wow, it's kind of a tough question. There's so many things you're thinking about. But, you know, if you're playing lines and you have a line with maybe a saxophone player or with a trumpet player or something like that, oh, I have a unison line with this, okay. You know, and really I try to really find, like, sometimes even listen, oh, this guy, we've played it 4 times already, he always plays the C sharp, so I'm going to play my C too, so when they ask in the booth, they won't ask in the booth, because maybe they won't, you know, it'll just sound in tune together, but, so I mean, like, trying to be hyper aware of my surroundings when I'm playing, whether, you know, hopefully the ideal situation is, like, hyper aware and cool, that's where I hear it too, and the guys around me are playing in the same place and have the same mindset, or they're hearing the note rhythmically in the same place and pitch-wise in the same place. Yep. But that's not always the case. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's a onward, I mean, it's an evolving kind of craft to be trying to learn how to play, maybe if it's not the most ideal situation, or to listen and find out, okay, how do I, if this guy's going to play this note sharp or if this guy's going to play that note low, you know, how am I going to fit my note in the middle, you know, and it's a challenge. I don't know, it's something I'm always trying to do and to get better at. But but that's sometimes, but in other times, it's just you sit in a section and boom, that's where it is, and it feels great, and you don't have to think so much. Or yeah, I don't know if does that make sense at all? I don't know.
It makes a ton of sense, absolutely, yeah, for sure.
But it's a tough question because. I definitely, like, going back to what I was saying earlier in the interview, I definitely kind of think of trombone playing first and foremost, and, like, kind of being I try to work on being a good classically rooted or legit rooted player, you know, and so hopefully a lot of those other things, by working on that stuff every day, you know, I tend to practice probably, at least I try to do a daily routine every day. It's basically just classical stuff, you know, and I spend a lot of time with a tuner. Kind of more as just kind of a reference guide. Every now and then I'll stop, I'll play an F above middle C and say, okay, you know, am I still playing it high, or am I playing it, you know, or, you know, especially like that kind of problem notes in the trombone, you know, G above middle C, or D in 4th position, above middle C, those kind of things.
And playing in large ensembles force you to address those issues. That's one of the great things.
Yeah.
You know, you have to play with a good sound and good intonation and clean and accurate articulations, and most importantly, good time and different concepts of swing and knowing how to adapt. I mean, that's what, you know, like you said, listening, but it's all those details that you can get away with really kind of skating or skirting those issues in a small ensemble. You know, no one's going to say anything if you're playing out of tune if it's just you in a rhythm section.
Yeah, good point.
So.
You had a really good, you were kind enough to have me in as a guest artist here at Hunter a few years back, and I remember just the way you rehearse the band. It's the same way you play. I mean, you just had a way of being super concise and right to the thing that's needed. And I think you're right when you talk about how, you know, you can get away with, I mean, Coltrane didn't play perfectly in tune. He's arguably one of the greatest improvisers ever, and you know, probably not the greatest thing if he was playing second tenor in a big band. Not that the thought of that doesn't even make sense, but in a certain kind of way, that's a very
well, and all
point.
These kids who want to play small group, I mean, what do they think? They're all Coltrane, you know, because none of us are, and you know, it's like aside from all the technical skills that you develop in a large ensemble, really what it comes down to, it's where you make connections and where you network. I mean, if you want to play small group, you better start playing in big bands because you're certainly not going to get small group gigs first, especially on the trombone. I mean, I wish I played a rhythm section instrument because there you can start playing small group exclusively. I mean, if you're really dealing. Yeah. But you're not going to get a small group call as a trombonist, you know, unless you're subbing for one of the few bands unless you're subbing for SF Jazz and subbing for Robin Eubanks, or if you're subbing for, I mean, Dave Holland's band hardly works anymore, which Robin also does that. So maybe you should study with Robin, I guess. Small group. I mean, what other small groups have trombone nowadays? I'm trying to remember. I mean, there's hardly any. Dizzy, you know, Mike D sometimes does small group stuff with the Dizzy Alumni All-Star Band. I mean, but, you know, think about it. Okay, some of the greatest young players today, Marshall, Elliott, what do these guys do? You guys are playing with big bands. I mean, that's where the work is. That's where you make connections, and there's a reason for that. I mean, if Elliott could be making the money he's making now playing small group, he would be. Yeah. You know, so it's you have to. It's not just paying dues. It's just that's where you meet people. That's where you sort of learn the business of music and develop those skills as well. And then obviously all the musical things we discussed, you are able to deal with those as well, or forces you to deal with those.
For me though, actually, I kind of had a funny way into jazz. I think because I was kind of first introduced to jazz through big bands. Like there was a big band where my dad was conducting. It was called the Falconaires. It was at the Air Force Academy. And you know, that was my favorite part of the concert. You know, when they would play, or I would go to their concerts, and they had a guest artist each year. But and the guys from that big band were actually my first teachers as well. You know, so one guy was named Mark Israel, was the first jazz teacher. He was a trumpet player there, and he got me started with a bunch of theory stuff and kind of patterns and stuff, and showing me things. And then say, hey, well, check out this. Maybe you like this musician. And then there was another trombone player there, a great player named Mark Burdett, and he really got me. He said, "Oh, check out these trombone players and stuff, you know." But you know, when I really liked going, and I loved the great, fantastic lead trumpet player, and I just loved that big band sound. So that basically kind of led me. I remember first I buy like all Doc Severinsen's records and stuff. You know, I had the Tonight Show band with Tommy Newsom, and I was like, all the other kids were listening to Metallica, and I'm like,
I'm the same way. I mean, my dad's a
big
band
had my
director.
Headphones on in bed, like like.
I get even for when I was a kid, I was total big band head. Watrous and Maynard, those were my two first. Chameleon and Manhattan Wildlife Refuge. But even worse than that, I was a big Buddy Rich fan, and not that that's bad. I ended up working for him for 2 years. It was a great experience, but I remember listening to those records, and he had that great arrangement of Norwegian Wood. Yeah. I was so sheltered, I thought Norwegian Wood was a Buddy Rich tune. So I get to college, and I'm like, yeah, I dig that Buddy Rich tune, Norwegian Wood, and somebody's like, what are you, high? Are you nuts? That's a Beatles tune, So I was like, amazing. Really? Like, and then a light bulb went off. I think, wait a minute, these aren't just Woody Herman, Buddy Rich, Maynard things, But anyway, we were all coming from that kind of.
Yeah, the first trombone solo I ever learned was a Clarence Banks solo on a Basie record from the mid '80s. When Frank Foster was leading it. Yeah. I mean, I think big band. I mean, I'm a student of history, man, as I think everyone should be, and I mean that's where everybody learned to play is in big bands. There's really no exceptions. Yeah. I mean, even Yeah, they're really.
Coltrane, you're talking about Coltrane. Coltrane.
Yeah, everybody got their
Navy
start
big
in
band,
big band. I mean, and certainly there's a practical reason for that, but I think that there are some musical reasons that you can draw from those examples.
I think the practical side of it is something I hadn't even thought about, but you're absolutely right. That's where networking and everything else can. And while we're on the subject of big bands, you guys are both a member of the Maria Schneider Jazz Orchestra, which is arguably the most successful big band going these days. It's incredible what she's accomplished, and great writing, and you know, all the things, all the accolades due to her. Can you talk about playing in the band and what kind of an impact it's had for you professionally?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think it's also interesting how that opportunity came to be. I mean, again, it's networking. You know, I got the call because of a big band that I play in, led by David Berger, as
we were on the same
Marshall
session, yeah.
plays as well. We were on the same session, and Maria's bass trombonist was subbing because David Berger doesn't normally have a bass trombonist. So we were recording music that he'd written for 4 bones, and George loved the section. I was playing lead at the time. You were playing second or third, and Pat Halloran was playing second. And he loved the section. And when Keith O'Quinn, her lead player, was locked into a Broadway show and had to miss like a month tour, George recommended me to play lead. I mean, she'd never heard me, she never heard of me, and I went in with no rehearsals. I mean, I've never practiced that hard in my entire life. You know, truly never practiced that hard. So went in totally prepared, and you know, the rest is history, I guess. But yeah, I mean, again, it comes down to networking in a big band is how it all started. But I mean, aside from being a huge fan of her music, I love the drama in her music. I love the kind of emotional connection that her music has on a lot of listeners. I love the way that she fuses composition with improvisation, and just the way that her music is in some ways incredibly detail-oriented, but also her solo sections, as Marshall can attest, are some of the most wide-open, completely spontaneous musical moments I've ever had. You know, some of these solos, you never know what's going to happen. One night you're sort of tipping and swinging, and the next night the rhythm section just stops playing entirely, and it's a solo trombone etude. You know, you never know.
Very lazy rhythm section.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what do they get
Temperamental
paid for?
guys.
Yeah.
So for me, it's one of the highlights of my career.
Wow,
definitely.
Very cool.
Yeah, I basically got into the band the same way as Ryan, although then he was there too to back me up, you know. So, but yeah, I think I had done one concert with her, and then she needed somebody to do a recording, Sky Blue, the last record that came out, and so yeah, I mean, I had been a huge fan since I had Evanescence when I was a kid, I think, or maybe first year of college I got it, and yeah, a huge fan of her writing and playing, and I mean.
I should mention too that you guys have a great section, and you mentioned George. The bass trombonist George Flynn, who's one of the best guys in New York, and he's been in her band from the beginning, I guess. And of course the great lead player Keith O'Quinn, who's been on everything and anything you can imagine over the years.
Greats.
But it's quite a great section with the two of you and Keith and George. Really.
But as Ryan was saying about like the soloing, you know, like these wide open vamps, which is really kind of not normal from the big band tradition, you know. That's usually, you know, oftentimes we have like playing in big bands, there's the big band solo. Okay, you get one chorus and it's formatted, and she does build in backgrounds and stuff to the composition. Sometimes I actually feel like I'm playing excerpts. Also because George Flynn's sitting to the left of me, so it's like, you know, you have to keep up, you know. Like, so if we have a gig coming up, you know, I start working out, go to the gym and stuff. And no, but she, like, literally, I mean, it's a pretty physically taxing. I mean, all the books are, I think, you know, because she, you know, sometimes I think the band taking almost an orchestric kind of vibe is different than the that you play in, you know, real swinging kind of big band stuff. So
yeah,
it's a different.
That third
different
book is
type
almost
of
like a bass bone book and written for tenor bone. I mean,
yeah,
minus the trigger notes, but it's like huge, loud, low, open.
But sometimes it feels like I feel like I'm playing like a 6-minute, you know, excerpt. You know, but then you have to stand up and go play a 4 or 5 minute solo.
Yeah.
So it's very, you know, and so now I used to kind of let it maybe got in my head sometimes like, oh wow, okay, man, I've been playing them really like relaxed now because I've been playing low notes for 5 minutes, but now I kind of just go for it, and you know, it's because you can't really do anything.
Yeah, that's good stuff.